Code of Conduct.
Yes, Keith Oswald will be coming forward with his team to talk about the Code of Student Conduct. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's Eddie and June. All right.
So we were up here earlier talking about Senate Bill 7826 and some of the changes. So June actually is going to talk real briefly with the slides of the changes that we have to actually make to both policy 5.1812 and 5.1813. So hand it over to you, Ms. Cisa.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. Every year I come forward to the board to talk about changes that we need to make inside the policy. It's required in statute that we do this once a year. This year, a little different than years past. We have been given the language that we need to incorporate, and we covered some of that in the previous presentation. But one slide that has not been covered yet that I do want to reference is a request has been made that we change the name of the policy. Right now it is two policies. We are required to have a student code of conduct for elementary students, and we are required to have one for secondary students. And the request has been made that we add K to 5 to the elementary and 6 to 12 to the secondary policy. The next changes that we've been asked to incorporate were covered in the earlier workshop, but they are required language insertions for the student codes, mandatory referrals to mental health services, and it lists the incidences. Again, it's any student who's determined to have made a threat or a false report or has brought a firearm or weapon, and the weapon descriptions will be what the state uses. The second one would be any person who makes, posts, or transmits a threat in writing or other record, including an electronic record, to conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism in any manner that would allow another person to view the threat. So once they have made that electronic threat, they then are required to have a mental health service referral. In addition, these are the predominance of our level 4 expellable offenses, and each one of these, when I bring the actual policy forward, will now have an MHR next to them that requires a mental health referral. So for every one of these individuals, again, the process and what that will look like is still in development, but they will be referred for mental health referral. And then the last piece that needs to be added to our student code of conduct is the language around threat assessment teams. And again, it's talking about the establishment of teams at each one of our schools whose duties include the coordination of resources, assessments, and interventions for students whose behavior poses a threat to the safety of the school. And then the second bullet is who the team is comprised of, which again is going to be the counseling staff, instructional staff, school administration staff, and required law enforcement. And that will be under the responsibilities of the safety officer that's defined in our district's safety policy. And that's my PowerPoint. Any questions?
Mr. Barbieri?
Just one question. You said the state will define what's a weapon, and when I was at one of the high schools a couple weeks back, a student was holding his keys, and he showed me he had a knife, was about this long. It had a little file for his fingernails, and with a little pointed thing on the end. It also had a little knife blade to pop out. The knife blade couldn't have been longer than an inch. I mean, is that a level 4 mandatory referral to mental health to have shouldn't we define?
Well, the weapons are defined by the state as to what they are: firearms, rifles, handguns. But then the use of that instrument, as you described it, would be whether it was used as a weapon. So if it was just in his pocket and it was a possession of it and it was just a filing knife, then that wouldn't be how we would code it.
What we see here is it says possession of a knife. It doesn't say anything about any particular type of knife. But
in the description in the code of conduct, it would define.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Any other? Dr. Robinson?
So just to follow up on that comment, there was a student that was expelled some years ago as an explosive device when it was dry ice in a 2-liter bottle and they added water, right? And it exploded. So in this day and age, as you see this policy coming back, would that count?
Again, if the intent was to harm and that's what it was created for and that child brought it for that purpose, then yes.
So
in possession of dry ice and a 2-liter bottle that are not combined, no. But if it was put together as you described it, then yes.
Okay, so we just need to look at that, because that kid was just being a kid. So, and then the other thing is, we're going to add mind reading to the job description for who? Okay, I'm sorry. So then, the only other comment I had is just in here, can we just make sure we define mental health services, whether if it's defined in the state's language, but because I just want to be clear what that is when we refer people, like what qualifies.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. When does this one come to us for final adoption?
Actually, we have to have the first read, I think, on the 20th or in July. So we'll have to have it done before the school year.
Thank you. That concludes our workshop topics. We have 3 discussion items. Dr.